Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a fascinating political mystery today, one that kind of flips everything we thought we knew about voter behavior totally on its head. We're unpacking a brilliant study by researcher Potipiroon, and it looks closely at the incredibly messy relationship between political corruption, public trust, and, well, the true price of getting things done.
Okay, so let's start with a really provocative question right out of the gate. Why do corrupt politicians actually maintain high levels of public trust? I mean, conventional wisdom tells us that if voters just have the facts, they'll punish corruption at the ballot box, right? But the real-world data proves that just isn't always true. We see it all over the globe, even in highly developed systems. This expected electoral punishment just totally fails to materialize. It's a puzzle that has completely captivated political scientists. Why on earth do people knowingly support bad actors?
Section 1. The Corruption Paradox. To wrap our heads around this, we first need to distinguish between two specific types of corruption defined by the scholar Susan Rose Ackerman. These actually perfectly mirror the Thai idioms chol rat and bong long. First, you've got bureaucratic corruption. This is essentially stealing directly from the people. Think of your small-scale bribes demanded by local traffic police or permit clerks. Then you have political corruption, which is stealing from the state. These are your large-scale illegal activities like massive kickbacks for huge construction contracts. Now, both of these are obviously destructive. They completely erode democratic governance. But surprisingly, they don't always destroy public trust in the politicians pulling the strings.
Section 2. The implicit exchange.
So, how does this happen? Well, it builds into the core psychological framework for today's explainer, known as the implicit exchange theory. The absolutely crucial point here is that voters are not simply being duped. No, they are making a highly calculated, rational trade-off based on their immediate needs. It's rooted in rational choice theory. Basically, it operates on the premise that citizens weigh a politician's corruption against other factors, like, say, policy positions that actually improve their local neighborhood. So, they might knowingly support a corrupt politician simply because they believe the material benefits to their community actually outweigh the negative costs of the corruption.
There's actually a very common saying in Thailand. Even with corruption, Thai people can still put food on the table. And man, that really acts as the emotional core of this academic theory. It beautifully illustrates the intense cognitive dissonance voters have to navigate just to survive. Because when citizens are faced with competing priorities, like demanding ethical conduct versus sheer economic stability and getting access to basic services, they're often forced into a corner. They prioritize the immediate benefits that affect their daily livelihood, and they rationalize the choice.
Section 3. Inside the Thailand laboratory.
To really test this theory out in the wild, researcher Potipiroon turned to local municipalities in Thailand. Following decentralization, these local governments ended up lacking effective oversight, making them fresh breeding grounds for corruption. Basically, a perfect real-world laboratory to study this voter dynamic. The study surveyed 590 micro-business owners, and these specific individuals are essentially the canaries in the coal mine because they're the most vulnerable to local extortion and bribery. While your average citizen might never interact with the local politician, these micro-businesses, like the food and beverage services making up a huge 40% chunk of the survey group, they need permits, licenses, and favorable zoning regulations, literally just to keep their doors open. They depend heavily on local public services, so they have a front-row seat to the local corruption regime.
Now, the structural equation model used in the study might sound dense, but it's really a treasure map of human behavior. It charts exactly how political corruption, competence, and performance all interact to influence public trust. The study meticulously controlled for whether a politician was simply competent or if the local government was just performing well. What it specifically isolates is responsiveness. That is the belief that government officials actively listen to and genuinely care about what citizens need. The goal was to see if responsiveness alone can somehow override the stain of corruption.
Section 4. Corrupt but responsive. And this brings us to the major plot twist of the data. It reveals exactly what happens when voters prioritize absolute bread and butter responsiveness over ethical cleanliness. Real-world figures illustrate this dilemma perfectly. According to the study, Thaksin Shinawatra won resounding victories despite facing corruption allegations. Why? Because he delivered grassroots policies, like the 30-baht healthcare scheme and village funds. His voters actually felt heard. On the flip side, you have Abhisit Vejjaviva, educated at Oxford and viewed with relative integrity, but he was heavily criticized for being out of touch, which led to pretty poor election results for his party. It highlights an excruciating dilemma for the voters.
The interaction between corruption and trust in this study proves something wild. It shows that high political responsiveness completely flattens the downward trust-eroding trend of corruption. It completely neutralizes the penalty that corrupt politicians should face. The data shows exactly what you'd expect. When responsiveness is low, high corruption drastically drops public trust. But when a politician is highly responsive to the people, the level of trust stays high, it stays almost totally flat, completely regardless of how corrupt they are. The public essentially just forgives them.
Section 5. The trust facade.
Now, while all of this perfectly explains the paradox, the data definitely leaves us with some chilling implications for the future of democratic governance. Politicians in weak states can easily manufacture what's called a trust facade by focusing on highly visible projects. We're talking road construction or quick tax cuts. They manipulate voters into a false sense of security while lining their own pockets behind the scenes. By loudly answering those immediate visible needs, corrupt officials create an illusion of a functioning democracy. It's a type of populism that stops citizens from grasping the true long-term devastation that corruption causes to their society's equality and infrastructure.
But it's not all doom and gloom. The study neutrally notes that the emergence of Thailand's Move Forward Party provides a totally different alternative model. Founded originally as Future Forward, the party secured 151 seats in the 2023 elections by explicitly rejecting traditional patronage networks. The data here suggests that when a reformist alternative is actually presented, one that combines clean politics with true civic engagement and focuses on policy over patronage, a segment of voters absolutely will demand accountability. It proves that the implicit exchange isn't the only way to win an election.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to apply to your own local elections. Are you seeing genuine accountability from your local politicians or just a well-crafted trust facade? Thank you so much for joining me for today's Explainer, and keep questioning the systems around you.